My name is Bill Fisher. This demo covers working with loops using Adobe Animate. Creating the looping animation is important to do before anything else when we start animating, because things like camera moves and other character movements will need to be designed to work around these loops. I have a bunch of background chickens in my animation, and I want them all to be pecking. I think I'm going to make 2 different pecking loops and then disperse those loops between the various chickens. The first step for making looping animation is to create a symbol from the graphics that you've already created. This group of chickens is a symbol, and that symbol is a graphic. We want to use graphic symbols as opposed to movie clip symbols, because graphic symbols will stream on the timeline as we scrub and as we publish and export the video, whereas a movie clip symbol will not. I'm going to use the components from my main chicken that I've already created to make my pecking chicken. So I'll select this column of frames, which selects all of the different parts. I'm going to copy the frames and then up here choose Insert New Symbol. I'll call that Chicken Pecking 1. I'm using 1 because I'm going to make 2 versions. I want to use a graphic symbol, and then I'm going to click OK. Now I can control click on this keyframe and paste those frames in. I changed my view percentage to 25% so that I could find it. Sometimes you don't know where the frames are going to place the character on the stage, so I had to go find it. I'm going to put the little chicken that I pasted in here on the center point. That's the little crosshair. It'll be easier to move around on the main stage that way. Now I can start to pose this chicken into a pecking pose. So this head will probably want to come forward. This body will probably need to lean forward as well. Once I have the chicken posed, I can choose this arrow, get back to the main scene, create a new layer for my pecking chicken, and from the library, it highlights the last symbol that I created. I can drag that chicken in. I could even hold the Option key down and duplicate several of them. If I want to handle these as a group, I can select them all, go to Modify, Convert to Symbol, choose Graphic, and I could call this Pecking Chickens Group 1. Now I can move them around as a group. I can scale them as a group. If I double click in, you see I have individual chickens. And if I double click into any individual chicken, you see I have all the parts. Now, if I change the part of one of these, they all change. That's because these are all instances of the original symbol. They're not individual symbols themselves. If I want to make a version, what I need to do is go back to the original symbol and duplicate it. And then I can call this Pecking Chicken 3, for instance. If I put this symbol in here, and if I double click into it, now I can change this beak and it won't affect all of them. Using the technique that I just demonstrated, I've set up 2 separate groups of pecking chickens. If I double click on this symbol, I can go inside of it. In the case of these pecking chickens, I actually have symbols that are inside of this larger symbol. Each one of these symbols, I'm going to create a loop, and those chickens will run through that loop as long as this timeline and the main timeline are running. Let's get a little closer to this chicken. Double click into it. You can see that I have a copy of the same chicken that I use for my main character. This one is bent over, however, so it's posed differently, but it has all of the same parts as my main chicken. Now on this interior timeline, I'm going to make this chicken peck. I think I'm going to make that pecking about 10 frames. So I go out 10 frames and create just a simple frame. I'm going to put a column here. We always work in columns. Insert a keyframe. And at this point, I'm going to pose this chicken into an upward motion. I think both the head and the body will move slightly. And I think I'll take the wings up a little bit. So I try to move all of the components just a little bit. And there's a peck. Now I can take this first column and holding the Option key down, bring it down here, and that will make the head go back up at this point. And then I can take this column, drag it down, and make the head go down at that point. I usually like to keep things a little bit uneven so that they feel a little bit more natural and less mechanical. I can select my loop tool, that was this, and I can test my pecking loop. Now I can backtrack in my breadcrumbs up here and go to the pecking chickens group. And as long as I make sure that I have some timeline in this graphic symbol, they'll keep pecking. And you can see all of the chickens that are this version are pecking along the same. Now I might not want them to all peck at the same time. So I can select this one, go to my properties, choose loop, and start at, let's say, frame 2. Now that chicken will loop differently than the one that I just did because I started the loop at a different frame. I can choose this one, and I can start this one at frame 4. And now each one of those will loop a little bit differently because they're each starting at a different frame. So I'm able to reuse this animation and stagger their starting points. Now let's follow our breadcrumbs back to the scene and scrub the timeline, and you can see that they are all still pecking. So as long as I have some timeline in this scene within this group of symbols, and of course within the individual chicken symbol itself, they will continue to run through their loops. Back in the main timeline, you'll see that as long as it's running, the chickens will be pecking. Now I can create a keyframe at any point on the timeline. Then with the black selection tool, click directly on the symbol. That's important. And then under looping, I can choose single frame. Now, this front group is no longer pecking because I told them to stop. I can set another keyframe behind that one and click on the symbol and tell them to start looping again at that point. I can also change at which point they start to loop. Maybe I want them to start at frame 4. And also I could tell the chickens in this point in the timeline that I want them to stop pecking at frame 6. So we have complete control over the timeline inside of the symbol from the main timeline in terms of whether it plays the loop, stops the loop, and at which frame we want to appear at any particular point on the main timeline. Well, that wraps up the demo for today. Thanks for watching.